All right, I want to welcome everybody to our discussion today on boundaries for your soul. We've been working our way through this book here. We have a bunch of other videos if you want to go back to YouTube or Facebook and look at our previous lessons on this. This book is Boundaries for Your Soul by Allison Cook and Kimberly Miller. And today we're going to talk about the integration process, which is step 5 in what's called the U-turn. And the U-turn is about taking overwhelming emotions that might otherwise overwhelm us and having them become a U-turn where we might actually use them for our growth, both emotionally and spiritually. In Luke 11 and verse 17, it says, Jesus knew their thoughts and said, any kingdom divided against itself will be ruined. A house divided against itself will fail. And if we take Jesus' words and we use them to think about our internal life and the things that are inside of us, the parts that are inside of us, the different parts that can emerge, if those parts are divided against themselves, then it's going to work against our emotional and spiritual health. A house divided against itself will fail. And so we want to figure out how these different emotional parts of us can actually work together for our good. And of course, God is part of that process of helping us. The parts of yourself that have previously been at odds, the idea is that they can now take on new roles. Okay, so the goal is for us to have an undivided heart, a heart that's, or also a mind that's not double-minded, that's not triple-minded, but a mind that's single-minded. And so there is often competition between the parts of us. Some parts may fear that another part will take over. And I've been talking for a number of weeks on our videos about this flyer I found in my driveway. And so there was a part of me that wanted something that was on that flyer that I know I shouldn't have. And there was another part of me that knows I don't need that thing. And then there's yet another part of me that was confused because the first time this kind of thing happened to me, I was too young to know what was happening. And so there's competition there, right? The part of me that wants something I shouldn't have doesn't want this other part of me that knows I don't need it to get involved. And so there's competition. The part of me that knows I don't need that thing doesn't want the part of me that wants it. And then the confused part of me doesn't know what to do. And when that part takes over, then the other parts don't, I don't get to learn from those other parts when the confused part takes over. So that's just an example from my life. In 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17 through 20, it speaks of what's called the ministry of reconciliation. The idea here as Christians is that we come alongside other people and we help them and we reconcile them to God, because the scripture says that all of us have gone astray. We've all headed our own way, and each one of us needs someone to help in this ministry of reconciliation to bring us back to God. If we do this for other people, we can reconcile them to God, then why cannot we do this for ourselves? And how can we do this for the parts of us that may be at odds with one another? How can we use that same ministry of reconciliation to bring these parts to work together for the glory of God and the things that God would want for the different parts of us and the parts of our soul? So that's what we're talking about today, is integrating these parts that might sometimes be at odds. We want to take the part that is most present to us, okay? And we want to focus on that part of us. We want to befriend it. We want to learn his perspective. We want to assure that part that it has value, that we're not going to cut it off or lop it off, that we're going to learn its fears and concerns, and we're going to invite this part to be near to Jesus and invite Jesus to be near to this part. And we're going to see if this part will then, at that point, sit back and allow you to work with the other parts that have emerged. In my case, I mentioned 3 different parts at least that emerged in a particular episode for me. And so I needed to figure out at that point which one of those was overwhelming me the most and work with that one first and then tackle the other ones. And so the analogy here is of working with children. Think about what it's like if 2 children get in a fight or a bunch of kids get in a fight, right? One of the ideas is to calm down one of those children first and then go and then calm the other one down. And once they're both calm, then you can see if they'll learn to work together. And this is the same thing about the internal parts of you. We want to be able to create internal boundaries. And so that requires negotiating with these competing parts of your soul to unite them around the values and commitments and goals that you have, and the values and commitments and goals that God has been bringing into your life over time. So here's the difference. In one way, we could see that our emotions can have a free-for-all. That's one way that we could let this happen. I'll explain that in a minute. Versus we could have our internal family have a moderated, vigorous debate. So now the free-for-all thing is where alternately each part overwhelms me, okay? There's that part of me that wants what it wants. And when that part overwhelms me and takes over, I have a certain experience. And then sometimes the part of me that knows better takes over, and that part begins to tell me what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And sometimes that part also gets into shaming me and making me feel really, really, really bad about myself and making me feel like an awful person. And then there's a part of me I mentioned earlier that gets confused, okay? If every one of these parts has the opportunity to overwhelm me, and that would be like the free-for-all when I just let them do whatever they want to do. All three might be yelling at me at the same time, or each one might be taking over for a period of time until the next one takes over, until the next one takes over. But there's another way, and this is really important for us to realize, is that I can reconcile or I can mediate these parts through my own spirit-led self. I am led by the Spirit of God. I have the Spirit of God living inside of me. Why cannot I, as an adult, kind of take these children by the hand and calm them down one at a time and bring them under Jesus' lordship? That's the goal. So I want to ask them, what new roles would they like to play? Now, the part of me that wants what it wants, in the case of wanting what was on that piece of paper on that flyer, was wanting a feeling of connection, right? That's what most marketing goes after. It's like, if you buy this product, you're going to feel connected. If you buy this product, it's going to make you feel a certain way. Well, in this case, it was a sense of connection. And so I cannot have this part remind me that I need to seek healthy connections. And so I can put that flyer away, put it in the recycle bin, and I can go and seek a healthy connection instead of trying to find something on that flyer that's never really going to satisfy me. Then there's the part that knows better, the part that knows exactly what I should do. And this part will nudge me toward Christ, who can search my heart and yet doesn't shame me, right? Because this part of me often wants to shame me. But if I can see that this part has a good intention, and I can see this part bringing me to Christ and letting Christ do the rest from there, that would be a good thing. And then there's the part of me that gets confused. And that part can learn by seeing this process, and it can become more clear on what's going on. If I, in my spirit-led self, am able to come alongside that part of me that wants what it wants and deal with that part of me in a healthy way, then I'm less confused. If I come along that side, that part that knows better, and I don't allow that part to completely take over and shame me, then all the confusion at that point is gone. Jesus says that when you hold a feast, you need to invite the poor, you need to invite the cripple, you need to invite, that's supposed to say lame and blind. And he says we'll be blessed if we do that. That's Luke 14:13 and 14. So Jesus invites all people to the table. And if you think about it, if you have an internal family and you have all these parts inside of you that are vying for, competing for your time and attention, Jesus is going to invite every part of you to his table as well. He's going to invite you to bring all of who you are to the table so he can minister to you. He wants to restore harmony in your life. In Psalm 23, it says, he makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside the quiet waters. Jesus is about restoring our soul, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to restore a semblance of order inside of us. Paul said in Philippians 4:12, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. And that word content comes from the Latin meaning held together. And so Paul was able to feel held together in every situation because he learned the secret, and he had learned it from Jesus. So this is the idea of being held together well is a well-ordered internal life. That's what we're after here. And that's what this integration process is all about. So one of the ideas is to hold a town hall meeting. This is an exercise that you can do if you feel like there are different parts of you that are competing against each other. One is to imagine the two parts of yourself that you're most aware of right now, and let them take turns at the microphone at the town hall meeting. If I go back to my illustration from earlier, I would let the part that wants what it wants Okay, have the microphone. Tell me what this is all about. Tell me what's on your mind, right? Now I can go over to the other part and say, the part of me that knows I don't need that thing on the flyer, what do you have to say? Say what you want to say. And obviously then the third part is just confusion. We know these two parts are competing against each other, and that's why confusion is there. So as soon as we're able to reconcile these first two parts, the third one, in my case, is going to go away. So ask yourself, what's the strongest feeling that you're having right now? Which one's the strongest? And focus on that one first. Now that you have that one, is there another part of you that doesn't like you feeling the first way that you felt? So in my case, I'd say I want what I want is the strongest feeling. But then there's another part of me that says doesn't like that. And so that I called that part the part that knows better, right? Now, what does the part that knows better want the first part to know? It wants the first part to know that going after that thing on that flyer isn't going to bring me satisfaction. In response, what does the first part that spoke want the second part to know? And so you're kind of going back and forth here and listening to both parts. And then we want to prayerfully consider, this is the main thing, what does Jesus want to say to both of those parts? Both of these parts might have a lot of things to say, but ultimately Jesus has the final say over these parts. So what do we want to do? We want to identify common goals. Okay, what do these different parts want, and is there some commonality? Can we negotiate some new strategies for these parts to work together for your soul's refreshment? And can we make them aware of each other's good intentions, right? Often sin in our lives starts with a good intention. In my case, it's a feeling of wanting to be connected, but looking in places where that's not going to happen well for me, right? And so there's a good intention behind that. But if it's followed, it's going to end in death, spiritual death or emotional death. And then check to see if these parts are willing to work together. So this is the idea to get us on this path toward integrating all these parts so they're not working against each other, because a house divided against itself will not stand. If you want to learn more about internal family systems, which is what we're talking about today, this Inside Out movie from Disney Pixar is a great example. You'll see on the cover there's 5 different characters. And so these are, we could say joy, sadness, disgust, anger, and fear are 5 of the major feelings that we feel. And in the movie, you'll see them competing against each other at different times. And then you'll see them working together. And when they're competing, you're going to see that the girl's life, who these characters represent, her life is a mess when they're competing against each other. But when they're working together inside this girl, well, you see that her life goes a lot better and a lot smoother. She's a lot more healthy. We taken today's lesson from this book, Boundaries for Your Soul by Allison Cook and Kimberly Miller. I encourage you to pick up the book and read it. It's got a lot of great things in it. If you'd like to join us live for these sessions, you can go to meetup.com/check your compass. Our next session next week will be about boundaries for your anger. All of us get angry from time to time. What if we were able to put boundaries around that anger so that it actually served our emotional and spiritual health? That's what we're going to talk about next time. I hope you'll join us.